So let's talk about Venus in excess. So in the urinary tract, when we see an excess of Venus, which would be, in this case, more of a relaxed tissue state, we see things like incontinence, excessive urination, a loss of tone to the bladder, the ureters, the urethra. Because there is laxity in the bladder, what can happen is that the bladder cannot fully evacuate all of the urine. And in some instances, when it's overly lax, it can actually create little pockets that don't drain all of the way. And this can make one more prone to infection. So more prevalence of urinary tract infections can occur. We can see excess, copious, clear urination. Even loss of sleep due to excessive urination. This can lead to a couple things. So one, this can lead to mineral loss, right? This can lead to excessive depletion of especially the mineral potassium, which ironically, potassium is very essential for maintaining a relaxed state in the musculature. So when you become deficient in potassium, you become more prone to cramping and spasm, which is the opposite when tension. So this shows how an excess of Venus in the form of relaxation can actually shift to a deficiency of Venus, leading to tension or an inability to relax. So that's a really interesting dynamic, I think, that can occur in general when we consider tissue states, is that one in excess can actually lead to a deficiency and vice versa. It can also deplete vitality. So this is, in traditional Chinese medicine, there's this concept of a leaky Jing gate, which tends to manifest as excess fluid loss, especially in the form of excessive urination, but it can occur from sweating too. But this drains your vitality. You're leaking out your vital force. The kidneys are really seen as kind of and this is Chinese kidney, so it's like the archetypal kidney. It's not just the two kidneys in your low back. Hold that primal fire and primal water. And when those are being depleted, people start to get fatigued and low energy and things like that. So that would in a way be a Venus excess, can ultimately lead to a Mars and Sun deficiency, right? As we're losing our vitality. Now, some of my favorite Venusian herbs here for this kind of relaxed state in the urinary tract would be, hands down, shepherd's purse is fantastic. That's Capsella bursipastoris. Which has a very strong urinary tract affinity as well as a very strong reproductive system affinity. Yarrow, Achillea millefolium, is very nice here as well. These two herbs, I think, are some of our best styptics. So this is all, which is, staunches bleeding. So this is using a Venus herb to treat a Mars pattern, basically. And then I also really like sumac, which would be either the staghorn sumac or the aromatic sumac, which would be Rus typhina, and I believe Rus aromatica. In terms of the Latin names. So these are basically great urinary tract astringents, very, very good herbs. There are others, but these are some of my favorites that I really like. Now, Capsella or shepherd's purse it is quite astringent, and one could argue that it has some correspondence to Saturn as well. But we do find that there are many a Venus plant that are tonic astringent as well, which is kind of an opposing effect to address that lax tissue state. Typically, lax tissue states are addressed with tonic astringent type remedies. Now, in the female reproductive system, we could see an excess of Venus in a couple different ways. This would be laxity of the uterus, especially post-childbirth, so a loss of uterine tone. Uterine prolapse would fall under this category. Menorrhagia, which can lead to a Mars deficiency, right? If there's excessive bleeding you're obviously going to be losing iron and losing too much blood, which can lead to a blood deficiency, which is a manifestation of Mars deficiency. We could also see oligomenorrhea here, which is in a way, basically a lack of rhythm. And I think the moon is going to bear some correlation to this as well, because there is a very clear rhythmic pattern to the moon. Of course, the menstrual cycle is very much governed and associated with the moon, but this can occur with Venus patterns as well. We can also see excessive growths in the female reproductive system, such as uterine fibroids, ovarian cysts. These will especially be also under the influence of Jupiter, which tends to grow things abnormally. Of course, these can be complex conditions. Many times they have hormonal underpinnings. Many times these are based on patterns of estrogen dominance and progesterone deficiency. So, and saying excess and deficiency in regards to estrogen and progesterone isn't always the most accurate terminology. I kind of tend to prefer the term dominance. So estrogen dominance doesn't necessarily mean there's more estrogen. It might be that there is something occurring in the metabolism of estrogen, receptor sites in excess. There's lots of complexity there, to be sure, in terms of the female reproductive system hormonal dynamics there. But I would say a general pattern in my understanding that the estrogen tends to be more closely associated with Venus, whereas progesterone tends to be more associated with the moon. This is why, when someone gets pregnant, progesterone becomes dominant, everything grows and nourishes and expands and fills out, and there's fluids. It's much more lunar, right? And estrogen excess tends to create more of that kind of Venusian tense state, an imbalance of Venus where, with PMS symptoms and things like that, where it's more of this kind of anxious, nervous, irritable quality, whereas a progesterone dominant PMS is going to be more like PMSD, like more depressed, melancholic, which is certainly a little bit more of a lunar quality. So these are some of the dynamics that I tend to think of in the female reproductive system. Some classic Venusian uterine tonics are excellent here. Again, shepherd's purse is great. I personally really like, well, not personally, but like to administer and use lady's mantle, Alchemilla vulgaris. In the rosaceae, fantastic remedy. I love that plant in a lot of ways. It's just a really cool magical plant and good medicine. Rose, it's not a common use for rose. I do like to include it here though, and have found it to be useful. And red raspberry leaf, of course, classic remedy here with a good, strong affinity for the uterus. I would also add Vitex, not notably uterine tonic, but Vitex is fantastic for that estrogen dominant pattern. This is why it is such a commonly used remedy for addressing female reproductive complaints on the hormonal side of it, because so many of them tend to be estrogen dominant. Now, I do have to mention that Vitex is quite contraindicated for progesterone dominant states, and because it can aggravate more of that melancholic state that progesterone can potentially generate. Another common pattern we can see with Venusian excess or too much relaxation, it would be in the venous circulation in the form of varicose veins. So varicosities, hemorrhoids, Venus can be a contributing factor there as well. This is, the veins relax, they congeal and pool with blood and can become inflamed, which can be very painful. Varicose veins are generally unsightly, and hemorrhoids are, probably wouldn't say unsightly because no one's probably seeing them, hopefully not, but they can be very uncomfortable for people. So these are just some other ways that we can consider Venus in excess.